The air at dawn was thick with the smell of wet earth and old blood. A thin gray light crept over the ridge, revealing the churned mud and dark stains of the battlefield. At the head of a small, weary force stood Sir Kaelen. He wasn't a king, not a high lord from some grand epic. He was a household knight, his armor a roadmap of a long, hard life, each dent and scratch a story of a battle barely won. Now, in his late 50s, his face was a mask of grim resolve as he stared across the field. Before them, the enemy army was a living ocean of iron and steel, their banners snapping in the cold wind like the teeth of a great beast. They outnumbered Kellen's men 10-1, maybe more. This wasn't a battle for glory. It was a desperate last stand. Their backs were to the dragon's tooth pass, the only thing separating the ravenous enemy from the heart of the barony. From the home Kaelen had sworn his life to protect. Lose this pass, and everything was lost. He felt a tremor beside him and glanced down. It was Finn, his squire. The boy couldn't have been more than 16, his eyes wide with a terror so pure it was almost blinding. He gripped his sword hilt so tightly his knuckles were white bone. Kaelen had seen that look 100 times, on 100 different faces. Most of them were now beneath the soil. He placed a heavy, gauntlet hand on the boy's shoulder. Finn flinched, then looked up, his young face pale and streaked with dirt. Kaelen didn't offer grand words of courage or promises of a glorious afterlife. Such lies were for bards and priests, not for soldiers on the edge of death. Listen to me, boy. Kellen's voice was a low rumble, rough as gravel. Forget everything you've heard about honor. Honor won't stop a spear from finding your gut. You see them? They want to kill you. They don't care about your name or your family. You are just meat to them. He pointed with his chin towards the enemy line. When the horns sound, don't charge like a fool. Find your footing. The ground is slick. A slip is a death sentence. Keep your shield high, but not so high you can't see their feet. A man's feet will tell you what he's going to do before his sword arm ever moves. Finn swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He was listening, truly listening, clinging to every word as if it were a shield itself. Don't go for the heroic kill, Kaelen continued, his gaze never leaving the enemy. Don't try to fight their champions. Look for the gaps. Look for the tired ones, the wounded ones, the ones who look as scared as you feel. A quick thrust to the thigh, a jab to the arm. Wound them. Make them a liability to their comrades. A dead man is one less enemy. A screaming, wounded man is a distraction for 3 more. He squeezed the boy's shoulder, a rare moment of connection. Your job is not to win the war. Your job is to live through the next 5 minutes, and then the 5 after that. Stay close to me, watch my back, and I'll watch yours. That's all the honor we need today. Across the field, a great horn blew, a deep, guttural sound that seemed to shake the very mountains. The sea of iron began to move, a slow, inexorable tide of death. Kaelen drew his own sword, the familiar weight a cold comfort in his hand. He gave Finn one last, hard look. Breathe, boy, and stay alive. Then, turning to his men, he raised his blade, and his voice, honed by decades of command, cut through the rising din. For the Baron, for the pass, hold the line. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more tailies from the edge of the battlefield. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. The world erupted into a symphony of screams and shattering steel. The horn's blast was a physical thing, a wave of sound that washed over us and stole the breath from my lungs. All around me, chaos reigned. Arrows fell like black rain, thudding into shields and flesh with sickening wetness. Men I had shared bread with only hours ago were now just cries in the maelstrom, their lives extinguished in a heartbeat. I kept my own movements tight, economical. There's no room for flourish when death is a hair's breadth away. Every parry, every thrust was a cold calculation born from a lifetime of war. This wasn't about songs or glory. It was about survival. It was about the man fighting to my left, his gritted teeth a mirror of my own. And it was about Finn. I could feel the boy's presence more than see it, a nervous energy at my back. I tried to keep him in my shadow to shield him from the worst of the carnage, but In a battle like this, even a shadow isn't safe. The air was thick with the coppery scent of blood and the sharp tang of sweat and fear. The ground beneath our feet grew slick, a treacherous carpet of mud and gore. I saw a man go down, his eyes wide with surprise as a blade found its home in his throat. Another fell to an arrow, a silent, clumsy puppet whose strings had been cut. There was no time to mourn, no time to even register the loss. We were a wall of shields and desperation, pushing back against a tide that seemed determined to swallow us whole. My arm ached, a deep, burning protest from my shoulder to my wrist. I ignored it. Pain was just a reminder you were still alive. I focused on the enemy in front of me, a big brute with a scarred face and wild eyes. He swung a heavy axe in a wide, clumsy arc. I stepped inside his reach, my own sword a flicker of silver, and the fight was over. One down. Another took his place. And another, they were a relentless, faceless horde. Then, a cry cut through the din, a sound that chilled me more than any battle horn. The Baron! They have the Baron! I risked a glance. Across the field, I saw it. The young lord's banner was down, his horse screaming on the ground with a broken leg. He was on foot, surrounded, his sword a lone spark against a dozen enemy blades. He was just a boy, really, not much older than Finn. A fool's courage had led him too deep. Every instinct, every lesson learned over decades of fighting screamed at me to hold the line. Breaking formation was suicide? But I saw the panic in Finn's eyes as he looked toward his lord, and something inside me snapped. I let out a roar that was pure animal fury and charged. I became a whirlwind of destruction, a path of blood and iron carved through the enemy ranks. A shield shattered against my blade. A helmet caved. I didn't feel the spear that took me in the side, not at first. It was just a sudden violent shove, a hot, searing pain that blossomed into a fire in my ribs. But I reached him. I slammed into the circle of men around the Baron, my sword a desperate, flailing defense. It was enough. The attackers, surprised by the ferocity of the lone assault, hesitated. That hesitation gave Finn the opening he needed. He darted in, grabbing the dazed Baron and pulling him back toward the safety of our lines. I saw them go, a brief glimpse of Finn's pale, determined face. Then the enemy turned their full attention on me. The pain was real now, a throbbing agony that threatened to pull me under. My breath came in ragged gasps. I was alone, wounded, a single island in a sea of snarling faces. I staggered back, my boots finding purchase on a small, muddy rise. This was it, then. This little patch of ground would be my last stand. I planted my feet, raised my shield, and met the coming wave. My sword felt impossibly heavy, but my will was iron. Let them come. I would be the shield wall. I would hold the tide. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from this world. Your support means everything. The world had shrunk to this tiny patch of mud and blood, the only ground that mattered. Kaelen's breath came in ragged gasps, each one a fire in his lungs. His mail shirt was heavy, not just with steel, but with the weight of exhaustion. A deep cut on his arm throbbed with every beat of his heart, a grim metronome counting down his final moments. His sword felt like lead, his shield a dead weight. Each parry was slower, each swing a monumental effort. His mind, however, was a whirlwind. It wasn't strategy or tactics that filled his thoughts now, but fragments of a life lived on the edge of a blade. He saw the dust of 1,000 training yards, the glint of sunlight on his father's helmet. He heard the echoes of laughter from comrades long dead, their faces vivid for a fleeting second before fading back into the shadows of memory. He remembered the promise he'd made to a girl with eyes the color of the summer sky, a promise of a quiet life, a small farm, a future that now seemed like a child's fantasy, a life he dreamed of but was never destined to live. But the body remembers its brutal trade even when the mind wanders. His arms moved on their own, a dance of death he had perfected over countless battles. Block, riposte, sidestep, thrust. He was no longer a man, but a machine built for war, a grim automaton carved from flesh and steel. He felt the jarring impact as his blade found its mark, again and again. But there was no satisfaction in it, only the cold, mechanical reality of survival. He was a bastion, a living wall, and he would not break. Then, through the sweat and blood stinging his eyes, he saw it, a shift in the tide, far across the field, a flicker of hope. The enemy's relentless advance was beginning to waver. He could just make out the familiar banner of the Baron, a roaring lion on a field of blue, surging forward. The old man had done it. He had rallied the reserves, inspiring them to charge back into the fray. The roar of the counter-attack reached Kaelen, a distant wave of sound that promised salvation. A profound sense of finality washed over him. His duty was done. He had held the line, he had bought the time they needed, but his own time was spent. His strength was a flickering candle flame in a hurricane. He saw a final desperate wave of enemies, their faces contorted with rage, surging toward him. He met them not with fear, but with a strange, quiet acceptance. He raised his sword one last time. He took one with a desperate shield bash, another with a clumsy yet fatal thrust. The world became a blur of steel and screaming. Then came the pain, a searing, white-hot agony that stole his breath and buckled his knees. A spearhead had found a gap in his armor. As he fell backwards, the world turning gray at the edges, his last sight was not of his killer. He saw the enemy banners, once so proud and defiant, now turning, scattering in retreat. And closer, he saw Finn, his young squire, no longer a boy but a warrior, fighting with a fury born of grief and vengeance. Kaelen's sacrifice had forged him into the knight he was meant to become. The sky above was a brilliant canvas of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. The battlefield, once a cacophony of war, was now settling into a profound, chilling silence. It was a vast tapestry of the fallen, a testament to the cost of victory. For a knight like Kaelen, victory wasn't about surviving. It was never about living to see the next dawn. The only true victory was a duty fulfilled, a promise kept in the face of oblivion. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more tales from the annals of history. We'll see you next time.